Happy World Environment Day, everyone. It's a happy day, but on the Environment Day, it's weird. We always have to also talk about problems and, of course, solutions. It's great to be here, jet-lagged and exhausted and tired to talk about water, my passion. I was born in Iran to parents. I have no siblings. Two people working for the water sector, so I was forced to hear about water all the time at home. My parents got to know each other through work and dated because of water, so I owe water a lot. It's okay to talk about it at any point, at any location, and what a better location than Venice with this beauty and everything. It's just inspiring to be here, learn about the work of yours, and seeing a lot of good people and inspiring figures like Professor Rinaldo sitting here today and many others. So let's talk about a topic that is a little sad, but I think I have a message that is more positive than negative. So I'm going to talk about a report that we published on January 20th this year, and has made some headlines, but I'm here not to tell you that this is beyond like some buzzwords. So the combination of two familiar phrases, bankruptcy and water, is the product of 2 decades of work and thinking. So this framing wasn't trivial, and I think that's something important. On January 20th, we made a bold statement and claimed that the world has entered the era of global water bankruptcy. And I'm going to tell you what that means, why we should be worried, and why we have a lot of opportunities now. So the report doesn't say something that we don't know. It just does a different framing to bring all those things that we know into one place and talk about the diversity of the problems we have, but the same roots or the same solutions that they need. If you go through the report, you see a lot of striking numbers. What is happening around the world to our surface water systems? Shrinking lakes, shrinking wetlands, declining soil moisture, and many other things. We keep talking about providing water and clean drinking water to humanity around the world. Despite that fact, we have billions of people who are still suffering from not having access to clean water, having to walk kilometers a day to fetch water. Girls, women who have to skip, their other duties, or girls who can't go to school, or children because they have to go and fetch water. That's a reality that is out there, and those people who are suffering from that issue never get a chance to be at a place like this, and we kind of have forgotten them, despite the fact that we say let's get them all connected, and despite the fact that this is a basic human rights. So the world has forgotten them. But the problem doesn't end there. That's the first stage of development. The problem is also where we start using water, because at some point, regardless of where you are in the world, you would run out of water. I live in Canada these days. Even in Canada, the city of Waterloo, an hour away from us, in a country that has one of the largest reserve of water resources, freshwater resources, has run out of water because of issuing too many permits. So our checking account, the surface water, is declining many places. Our groundwater reserves, the savings account, is also declining. Glaciers are melting. That's another major savings account. These are the things we inherited from our ancestors, and they're all declining. Food baskets of the world are being threatened. Where we produce food, there are people who are suffering from water shortages and water scarcity. Why does that matter? Because that would affect the food prices globally, but more importantly, if we are talking about those people, they lose their livelihood. They would starve. They have to be displaced. They have to migrate to other places, search for jobs. That means tension. That means conflict. That means national security issues. Soil, another important part of the ecosystem, connected to water, is also suffering. Too much water withdrawal, loss of soil moisture, soil salinization, degradation of soil is another issue very much connected to water, agriculture, and food production, right? So let's not forget, 70% of the world's water is in the good hands of farmers that produce food with it. And these resources that are declining are threatening our food security and global economic stability. What else? Our health is being impacted by this. Water scarcity, more pollution means major environmental health implications in different ways in different locations. So pollution is there, declining resources is there, because water bankruptcy is not only about quantity, but also about quality. Some places around the world have a lot of water, but that water is so polluted that it's not usable, so that becomes another source of water scarcity in these places, and we have all these things together. On top of all these, we now have countries fighting over water, users fighting over water, communities saying no to the implementation and building of new data centers because they're really worried about it. We keep adding to our demand, but the problem is not stopping. As a result, we are seeing these drying wetlands around the world, sand and dust storms, desertification, more wildfires, land subsidence, and sinkholes. What you see on left is just what happened last year, like the photos that came out last year in an area producing a lot of food in Turkey. And these are there were 700 of these sinkholes, and we don't know how to fix these issues. Biodiversity loss is another issue that we need to deal with. So we call this situation a water bankruptcy, and let's see what that means. So I talked about the checking account that nature replenishes for us every year, that is becoming more limited in some places around the planet because of climate change. The timing of the flows is also changing. We have built our infrastructure, we have built our legal systems and institutions based on that timing, that stationarity that we assume there, but things have changed. That's why even our most stable international treaties are now being threatened. Stakeholders and users are fighting over the water that doesn't exist anymore. The timing has changed. The snow has become rain in some places. Glaciers are melting. So surface water systems are our checking account. Aquifers, our savings account. Soil moisture, our checking account. Glaciers, our saving account. These are all being impacted. And we have uses that are being added. Urbanization continues, population growth continues, food production is increasing, and we are adding more and more demand to this fragile ecosystem. But let's think about water for a second. What is water? The way we have treated water, our institutions, our thinking, our management frameworks, is like, us engineers, we assume water is a service or a good to be delivered and consumed. We assign rights, we design systems, we introduce different engineering elements with this thinking. And all the institutions we have and the laws and everything is to protect this good or service. But what produces water was not really our main concern. Hydrological systems are being disrupted. The hydrological cycle is being disrupted. The climate system is being disrupted. We have deforestation, which has a very much big impact on water, and we have all these other things. So how would that work if you do not do anything about the disruption of the processes that produce water? So you want to protect the product, but you're not doing anything about the process behind it. So the most important element of this framing is to think about what water is connected to. Water is connected to the climate system, for sure. We say climate change or a climate crisis is a water crisis. That's a well-established fact. But do we talk about water crisis being a climate crisis? Because it's a two-way relationship. And how come we don't talk about that? Water is not only a downstream sector, it's also an upstream sector. And missing that fact creates a lot of opportunity losses for us. If you think about this ecosystem, there are elements that rely on water, and there are elements that water rely on because it's a loop, it's a reinforcing loop. So the moment we try to put one component of this ecosystem as the upstream of the other one, we miss those opportunities for intervention, and that is very important. I'm going to talk about it. But what does water bankruptcy mean? Water bankruptcy is about, first, insolvency, and second, irreversibility. These two should exist together to create the situation of water bankruptcy. Insolvency is using too much water that exceeds the available budget, essentially the natural budget, for an extended period. So you keep putting more and more pressure on the system. It's possible to do that. Why? Because you can steal from nature. You steal the environmental rights of nature. And that's the most silent stakeholder. You keep stealing, and the system is okay. You see signs. There is some resilience there until the point that you have the issue of breakdown. You have the issue of irreversibility. Your species go extinct. You have the subsiding land. You have sinkholes. You have things that at least we don't know how to reverse them. Our engineering and science doesn't know how to reverse those processes, bring it in an extinct species back to life. We don't know how to do it. Sometimes we know how to do it, like a dry wetland, a dry lake, Aral Sea, Lake Rumia, like these massive Dead Sea, Great Salt Lakes, and these places around the world. But it's so costly, socioeconomically, politically, to bring them back that we cannot imagine that in a foreseeable future we can bring them back. So we have the issue of irreversibility, and that's extremely important because that cycle, that thing would be disrupted forever. So what we think is just an anomaly, a deviation from normal. We keep saying, oh, this year is going to be hotter, this year is going to be dry, this year we have wildfires. What we see, what we assume would be an anomaly is becoming the new normal. And our essentially natural capital, our natural assets are declining. We're cashing them, we're liquidating all those assets. And we are no longer just living off the interest of that natural asset. We're using the principal, we're spending the principal, we're eating all elements of that ecosystem, and it's declining forever. And we're not satisfied anymore. We're still not satisfied. We keep increasing our water use. We keep producing more food. Of course, we need that. And then at the same time, we have climate change that is disrupting the whole system. Is creating another problem. And these equilibria that we built our societies based on are being disrupted. This city can go underwater. And all the things that you had for many, many years might not function within a few decades because you built a system based on historical conditions that no longer exist. And that's not an anomaly. This is not a temporary deviation. This is the new normal, and that's something to be extremely worried about. Now, the problem of water is that water stories are very diverse. Water problems are very diverse around the world. We go from one location to another. Water problems and water stories are different. And that makes it very hard to connect. Even within one country, you have a location that is dry, and you have another location that people are suffering from floods. Within a year, you have the dry season and you have the wet season. People keep forgetting the water stories. You go from one location to another, manifestations and symptoms of water bankruptcy are different. So on top left, this is Chennai, a big city in India where day zero hit. And day zeros are becoming more and more frequent around the world. My hometown, Tehran, was in the stories last October, and then prior to that in summer because the city was running out of water. Fortunately, now there has been a lot of rain. The situation is better. People have totally forgotten that, just a few months ago, they were talking about even relocating the capital, a mission impossible. But these are becoming more and more frequent. Cape Town, you know the story, but this is happening in both global north and global south. Glaciers in Tibet, that's another one. Hoover Dam, Lake Mead. This dam inspired dam building around the world. It created a revolution. Many leaders of the world watched the Americans and were very inspired by this and built dams and dams and dams and dams. And these reservoirs that were supposed to protect us in many places are empty themselves. This reservoir has been recently in its lowest level throughout history. Another one, in India, a lake that has changed its color because of water quality degradation, right? Some of the assets are becoming toxic. You're not going to touch them because they're useless. Australia, soil salinization. My country, northwest Iran, Lake Urumia. This year, the situation is better, much better. People believe that even the problem was solved just because of the recent rain. But this was the condition last year. Totally dead. And that's the situation that we need to deal with. Is Iran the only one suffering from it because it's the Middle East? No. We have seen it in we have the same story of Aral Sea, Great Salt Lakes, Dead Sea, Lake Chad, and these things are happening around the world. Turkey, another issue, resulted from too much groundwater withdrawal. Manifestations are different, but we have the global north and global south in it together. This is no longer the problem of the dry places around the world. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are financially, and it doesn't matter how rich and poor you are when it comes to water budgets. What matters is how you manage your budget. That's why rich people also go bankrupt. Now, why water bankruptcy and why insisting on this terminology? So in 2014, I wrote another paper on Iran's water crisis, and it became, I would say, it made some noise and established a new narratives or definition or framing of Iran's water problems, talking about the different root causes and so on. And then later on, with a documentary filmmaker, we were making a documentary on Iran's groundwater issues. And the producer had found some old footages, black and white, videos that I was watching and listening to this, and I heard water crisis in the narrative. Black and white, very old, few decades. Then I wrote my first water crisis paper when I was an undergrad. Then I wrote another one in 2005, and then 2014. So that's only my life, but this guy also has been talking about water crisis. So how can something be in a crisis forever? Crisis has a meaning. It's just an anomaly. It's a shock. It's a deviation from normal that must get everyone together. And if you are in a crisis, then all you focus on is mitigation. You're hopeful that you can bring the system back. All your strategies are about mitigation. But bankruptcy is about failure. It's about the state where you raise your hand up and you say, I can't do it anymore. Sorry, guys. All the stakeholders, all the creditors, come, let's talk. This is what we have left. Your rights are credible. You have the rights, you have the permits, but we don't have enough water. We don't have enough money. We have to live with what we have. We have to fix what can be fixed, but the business model is not working anymore. We need a transformation. We need to change this thing. The worst thing for the state that is going bankrupt, the person that is going bankrupt, or is in the state of bankruptcy is denying bankruptcy, denying the failure, because then you say, give me one more loan, I'll fix it. Invest a little more. Give me another credit line. Give me another credit card. I can fix it, I promise. That's what we are doing. Let me build a dam. Let me dig a deeper well. Let me build another desalination plant. Let me implement another water transfer project. These are not bad. We need water supply increase. But the problem is if you don't control expenditure at the same time, All you do is making your system more dependent on your water supply. Increasing water supply means increased consumption, increased development, further and further. And you fall into a hydroecological cycle where you keep feeding a system that is failing. You keep spending more money that is in a system that is failing because you're nostalgic. You think the old thing is there. You're denying reality. You're denying failure. And when I say this, people say, "Oh, but this is too dark." I'm like, yes, it is. But if I'm your patient and you're my doctor and I have cancer, I really beg you to tell me that in early stages. And yes, if I can no longer be where I was, very healthy, running, playing sports, and all of that. But if you go through the chemotherapy, that painful process, that expensive process, and I accept the fact that I have a disease to deal with, then I have a chance to survive. I won't collapse, and that's the point. So water stress is another term we use. That's like you can be highly stressed, but not bankrupt, not insolvent. Like, a lot of us are, stressed because of work. Our life is very stressful, but we function, we survive. That's a bad sign, but it's not there. Crisis is where you have an anomaly, but bankruptcy is about mitigation plus adaptation, fixing what we can be fixed, preventing further damages, and adapting to the new reality. Now, what's wrong with this bankruptcy? I said we're all in it together, global north and global south. And when we say systems are bankrupt, and when we say the world, the planet is in the era of global water bankruptcy, we don't mean that every aquifer, every nation, every river basin, every city around the world is water bankrupt. That's not what we mean. We're saying era of global water bankruptcy. That means that we are seeing more and more human water systems that are failing. They go into the mode of irreversibility, and they can no longer bounce back to where they were. Why is that important? Because we're connected, interconnected through trades, through food trade in particular, through migration, through socioeconomic relationship, and lots of other things. Also climate system, also the environmental system. We've learned it the hard way. Strait of Hormuz closed. We're all suffering. That thing, even the Iranians are shocked that strait was so important for the world. The equilibrium is disrupted. That equilibrium that we were used to. The world has been addicted. Now all those countries that were lecturing us about climate change mitigation are saying, "Where's my oil?" Right? And that's that equilibrium. Disruption of one equilibrium, closure of one strait in the world is impacting the world's economy. And imagine what happens if the food disruptions happen. 70% of the world's water is used for food production. Food is the most important product of the water world. And for the world to function, food should remain cheap and highly subsidized. Imagine what happens if the Africans start charging us the right price for food. Global South does that to us. What happens to our economies in the North? Now, this is exactly the problem here, because the global North manages to use its water more efficiently when it comes to economic productivity. Now we see all the pushback against AI. We published a report 2 days ago, actually. It has made some headlines now. And I have to tell people that when we say AI has a high water footprint, data centers has a high water footprint, it doesn't mean that we should not develop AI. It simply means that at some point you got to make a decision and understand the trade-offs and say, do I want to produce alfalfa, wheat, AI, this industry, that industry? Because you cannot have it all together. That's not going to work. At some point, you run out of water. And this is the major issue. So if you spend a drop of water in AI, your economic return is much higher than a drop of water used for producing cucumber. If you can't afford it, do it, but make sure the benefits are shared with the local community, with the farmers and so on, and you have a long-term plan for your food security. The issue we have is that the world is not equally vulnerable to the issue of water bankruptcy. The poor of the world are going to pay the price for this. We did another report late in April on the water impacts of critical minerals extraction. Critical minerals, fuel of the 21st century, fuel of the fourth industrial revolution. Where did they come from? Many countries in the global south. What's happening to those people in the extraction zones? And we have, a display here on this issue. What happens to these people? People are dying of pollution, children, women, all those things. And I get to ride my EV in Canada and be very proud of being adopting a very climate-friendly lifestyle and helping the planet. And we save the next generations of our children in the global north at the expense of killing people right now. We save the future, but we're killing people in other places. In some of these areas where you have extraction, life expectancy is 40 years. People die even before they develop. They have a chance to develop cancer. We don't talk about it. We don't speak about that. It's the issue of injustice. COVID-19, when it came, we said it's treating us equally. The virus doesn't recognize between our bodies. True. But the virus has a hard time to get to my body in the north. In the south, they don't have vaccines, masks. They don't even have water to wash their hands. And we're saying, like, stay at home, wash your hands. There's no water. There's no shelter. Or if you're living in slums, actually, it's better for you to get out because slums, if you're at home, you get more exposed to this. We are not equally exposed to these risks. And that's the problem we are having. And if we care to address this issue equally, fairly, and if we care about justice, we got to do something about it. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't extract critical minerals. This doesn't mean that we should invest in renewables. It doesn't mean that we should not invest in data centers and AI and all of that. It means that we have to think about it. And if we manage to create pollution with the same model during the oil extraction phase, where my country is still struggling from the consequences of that, I don't want to see that happening in Africa and South America and East Asia and a lot of places. That's the problem. But we keep repeating because we have the power, we set the rules. And we talk about the things that matter to us the most in the north. If I'm not sitting on natural gas, or my country is not sitting on natural gas and oil, then I talk about wind and solar. That's fair. Let's do that. But don't sell it to the rest of the world as the only solution to the environmental problems we have. Maybe the intervention mechanism solution at some location is different because those people don't even have horses and donkeys and you're talking to them about EVs. And that's where water becomes very important, because if you think about the global south, if you think about these farmers, users of water who are mostly in the global south and whose life is dependent on water, whose health is dependent on water, their communities are dependent on water, then water becomes the medium of delivery for making good impact in the world. Because we can improve quality of livelihood, we can invest in water for poverty alleviation, we can invest in water for improving health, we can invest in water for food security, we can invest in water for all the SDGs and better quality of life. We can invest in water for bringing gender equality. We can invest in water for fulfilling the human rights. We can invest in water to build peace. All the things that the United Nations stands for, not the United States. That's I wish. United Nations is advocating for this, but even within the United Nations, I don't think we are exploiting this strategic potential. And why is this year a good time to talk about this? We have the SDG 6 review next month at HLPF, High-Level Political Forum. We have the 3rd UN Water Conference in December. We had the Dushanbe Water Conference last week. So we have a lot of events for talking about water, and the water story is still new. Just thinking about it differently and talking about it. But you have to present it differently. So we have the 3 Rio conventions. Climate change, the Climate Change Cup. Most people don't know that we also have the Biodiversity Cup and the Desertification Cup. So in August, we have also the UNCCD conference. That's a cup for combating desertification. if you think about all of those things, and if you think about the connection of water with the rest of the natural capital and natural assets, then you know a dollar invested in water is a dollar invested for climate mitigation. Because if you improve the livelihood of farmers, if you treat water as the saviors of the planet, not the enemy of the planet, then we have a better deal, because better soil management, better water management means climate mitigation, means mitigation of biodiversity loss, means mitigation of desertification. Then the entry point can be different. It's about thinking differently and framing differently. And why is that needed and helpful, or why do we have an opportunity? Because the world is very fragmented these days. Countries of the north and south don't trust each other. Political parties within countries don't trust each other. But water is a connector within and between nations. Within nations, actually water is an issue of the political right. It's the issue of the rural constituencies. It's the issue of farmers. If you're America first, you got to think about water. If you're bringing every production line to home, you got to think about water. Can you afford it or not? So even if you have that mentality, which is real, nationalism is real. This is something there. You got to think about what is happening around the world. If you can violate international law, just undermine international law, attack countries, go kidnap presidents and do things that you want because you're powerful, then of course countries would think about something. They would think about their national security. They think about their food security and so on. So those are real things. But if water is exactly the medium of delivery for you, the medium that gives you the chance of aligning your national priorities with international priorities. It gives you the chance of aligning your national priorities with the environmental priorities that we have been talking about. Yet, it's easy theoretically to talk about it. Yes, water is a common denominator. Let's advocate for that. Let's talk about that. Let's remind people that water is an upstream sector. Don't treat it as a downstream sector. But at the end of the day, you need to do two things. At the macro level, countries need to decouple their economy from water. Mission impossible, because there is no dry activity in the world, right? Even breathing requires water. But that means that economies have to reduce their pressure on water. Iran is under sanctions. What do you do under sanctions? Resistance. How do you do that? You waive all the environmental regulations. You tap into natural resources. You extract more to be able to survive. You burn your resources to be able to survive. Economies that are have inflation do the same thing. Now EU is talking about bypassing a lot of environmental regulations when it comes to extracting critical minerals, water laws, and so on, because you want to develop. You want to not stay behind in this race. So Canada last night announced last night by our time, they announced their AI strategy. They want to develop further and further. The risk is that you undermine environmental regulations and protection of the environment. So what you need to do is to ensure that your economy puts the least amount of pressure on your water and other natural resources. That means more investment in industry, more investment in service sector, and then think about food production, because the world can produce more food with less land, less water, provided that we find alternative modes of livelihood for the farmers who are farming inefficiently, but they have no other choice. So governments bribe their water to buy stability, bribe their natural resources to buy stability, because any reasonable, rational, political figure, political leader in the world knows that unemployment is a far scarier problem than water shortage, unfortunately, because environmental problems are secondary, are future issues, not primary issues. So that's what we need at the macro scale. At the micro scale, I'm saying we need to provide alternative modes of livelihood. That means economic diversification at the national level. How can you do that overnight if you're a poor country and no one is giving you money or technology? So this is the hard part. These countries need investments, need finance, need the transfer of know-how and capacity building and technology. That's possible because many times, in the water case, fortunately, a lot of things are not really like rocket science. A lot of things are simple things, but still finance is a big bottleneck. But again, we have an opportunity there because now we're rethinking about international development funds, how we were financing things. And if you put this lens on, this understanding that investment in water is investment in everything else, then the next time you're thinking about a climate mitigation fund and giving a loan or having an event or doing training and capacity building, you might connect it to water because it's not going to steal from other areas or objectives. And that's, I think, something that we can all work on, just creating more importance for water for the good of humanity, for our future. Let's advocate for water. Let's make sure that we can push water up in the national security agendas. We make the defense community and intelligence community and security community more sensitive to it, give them the understanding that investment in water can earn security for countries. Let's invest in water also for the environmental goods and not forget that water can be our common denominator in this fragmented world. Thank you.